1 year. 1 year since Detroit emerged from bankruptcy, quicker than anyone could hope. But where are we 12 months later? And the presidential race. Do the facts even matter anymore? Today is Sunday, December 6, 2015, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Welcome to December, which may have you in the annual holiday hurry. But let's slow down for just a minute this morning to look back at the path of the last 12 months. They weren't just any 12 months for the city of Detroit. They were the critical first steps into the sunlight after the dreadful long night of bankruptcy. The judges, the parties on both sides of the decision, the oversight board, the governor, the emergency manager, all of those who kicked into the grand bargain, all of them knew that the court rulings weren't exactly magic dust. Detroit was going to have to find its own way. Yes, without the 15-ton backpack of debt, but the city was going to have to find a way to not only function, but to grow, to arrest the horrendous slide that put the city into bankruptcy in the first place. So, how has the city done in the one-year anniversary as we hit it this week? We're going to talk about that this morning. And we're also going to dig into one of the strangest presidential races anyone can remember. Do the facts matter, or are we in a post-factual world where the facts are what you or a website or a candidate says they are? It's all this morning on Flashpoint. A lot to get to this morning as, yes, this week will mark the one-year anniversary of Detroit emerging from bankruptcy. Very happy to have with me this morning a guy who has been at the Detroit Free Press for 33 years, their terrific business columnist who this week announced that you're stepping down later on this month. Tom Walsh. Tom, thanks very much for coming this morning.
Great to be here.
Next to him is his colleague at the Free Press who runs the editorial page, Stephen Henderson. Over on the other side of the table, the civil rights director for the city of Detroit is Portia Roberson, and editorial chief at the Detroit News, Nolan Finley. Thank you all very much for being here. Tom, let me start with you. First off, give me your thumbnail on the way that this year has gone. We came out of bankruptcy much sooner than anybody could have predicted at the most optimistic end of the spectrum, but how have we done since?
We've done fabulously. It's really hard to put a negative on it in any way, shape, or form. I mean, who would have thought that at this point, we would have skated through the bankruptcy, Kevin Orr would be gone, the serendipity of Mike Duggan getting elected on a write-in vote and taking the reins and getting along with a Republican governor and legislator and getting pretty much everything he wanted out of them. Streetlights are turned on. I mean, obviously this is a city with lots of problems, and there are still big ones left, the schools chief among them, as well as continuing crime issues. But overall, it's certainly the greatest accomplishment of Rick Snyder's first 5 or 6 years in office.
It's funny. There's so many crazy things have happened in the span of time, Stephen. You forget things like, oh, Mike Duggan had to survive as a write-in candidate. I mean, it really has been an extraordinary time.
Well, I've said before that I feel like this period of time in Detroit's history will, in the future, be looked at sort of and analogized to 1805 when the city burned to the ground, and you literally had to start over. We've really hit that kind of low over the last not just a year or two, but think of what preceded that, the spectacular scandal that consumed the Kilpatrick administration. And I think sometimes we got to stop and give ourselves a break, right? There are a lot of things that aren't going right. There are a lot of things that still need desperate attention, but given all of the things that we've endured over this time, I think, we're doing pretty well.
Portia, it's not hard to find, though, voices, especially online, of people who still look back at this as a state-created problem, a state takeover that ended up robbing pensioners of money that was legally or at least ethically theirs. It's not hard to find people who still think that that it wasn't all that great of a thing.
Yeah, and I think you're always going to have that, but I think at the end of the day, what we've gotten out of bankruptcy is we've gotten city services much improved. I mean, we've got buses that are running on time. We've got response from police and fire that's much quicker than it was 4 or 5 years ago. We've got street lights on.
The lighting alone.
The lighting alone. I mean, and
remarkable.
People who live in the city of Detroit were desperate for that, and they're happy with the fact that whatever had to be done was done, and we got out of it, and we're starting to see that increase in city services. And so I think, what Detroit is going to be is it's going to be an example for other cities. I think they are across the board major cities across America that are faced with the same issues that we're faced with. The reality is that Detroit is going to be an example for them to get it together now so they don't end up in bankruptcy. But if they have to go there, look at how Detroit did it to see how well we did it and how we came out of it well.
Certainly seems to be the thumbnail on it to a lot of people. Nolan, what are your thoughts after a year?
Well, bankruptcy was a triumph for the city, and I don't think any of us expected that it would be.
Those are two words that don't generally belong in a sentence
of course,
together.
we all sat here beforehand and talked about all the various doomsday scenarios, and you still, for all of those who said at the time, including the mayor, that there was another path, another option, I think the outcome and where we stand today is solid proof that Governor Snyder made the right choice and the only choice at that time.
Then where are the problems now that lurk ahead? Tom, what do we worry about from here on out?
Well, and I think the mayor would say it too. I think this city, along with many other cities in America, has not solved either its crime problems or its school problems, its public school problems. And at this point, at least we have company in some of those issues. Obviously, Chicago's got huge problems, and other places have been through. I think it's somewhat remarkable that Detroit came through the bankruptcy period, which with some big issues about taking voting rights away from people, but came through without any major civil unrest of the kinds that we've seen in Baltimore and Charleston and lots of other places. I mean, obviously, one really awful police shooting could change all that in a heartbeat. Sure. But I think Detroit's come through a lot of this pretty well.
What are your worries as we move forward, Steve?
Well, I mean, the financial picture is still pretty precarious. I mean, but for some really good luck and planning, we could end up back in a lot of financial trouble. That's always going to loom over us. But I think a lot of the problems that we face now are meta problems, city problems, things that all cities, as Tom was pointing out, are facing. And we really do have to decide about what kind of priority cities have on state agendas, on national agendas. The state and national disinvestment still were big drivers behind Detroit's insolvency. Are we going to see that turn around? And what are we going to do for the people who live in places like Detroit, the 400,000 or 500,000 people who really struggle just with basic opportunity? No one has figured that out, and that's an American problem, but it plays out more dramatically here than any place else. And if we don't start really attacking that in big ways, we're not going to get to the place we think we're going to.
That's a fair point, Portia. We've got, then you're living in a well-lit neighborhood
right.
where the garbage is picked up, but you don't really yet have the opportunity to make your life go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two biggest issues are, of course, crime and education. And what Detroit is going to need to see in the next few years is population growth, people moving back into the city and people who want to stay in the city. So what you have is people who will move in, they're young, they don't necessarily have children, and when they start to try and educate their children in the city of Detroit, they move back out. What we're going to need to see from, I think, the state now is a partnership before we get to crisis point. And that's what happened the last time. People stepped up when we got to a crisis, but where's the partnership going to be going forward as we look at some of these other issues and make sure that revenue sharing is still there as we go forward and other issues are taken care of? I can't say that the educational system is not already in crisis, but we really are going to have to delve deep into that, because otherwise people aren't going to stay here.
In fact, to move the governor's plan on education forward, you really got to have buy-in from the rest of the state. In Lansing, the legislators, and we talk about Detroit fatigue, they're getting a little weary of it being dumped on their plate. The governor would say it's already on your plate anyway.
And that's reality. And I don't think in the end they're going to have no choice. That debt belongs to the state. You let this school district go to bankruptcy, and that's a very real possibility. You let it go to bankruptcy, and most of that debt comes back to the state automatically, and it comes due now. So you don't have an orderly process for paying it off. I think you're going to hear a lot of squawking from the legislature, but I think when they sit down and have the facts presented to them, they're going to have to vote to save this district and to
when
bail
I get
this district
emails
out
and
of
phone
its debt.
calls though from people who say that state intercession has made things worse rather than better in the schools, it's a tough argument. Isn't it a tough argument to make the counterpoint to that? I mean, they are more in debt than they were when the state took them over.
Of course they are, but that doesn't change the fact that they have that debt, and that debt, it belongs to the state of Michigan, and is going to bring down every other school district in the state if it's not dealt with. This is something like a $150 per student obligation for everybody in the state if this district collapses, and I don't think these legislators are willing to go there.
I want to let everybody else weigh in on that, but we'll do that right after we take a quick break. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. We'll be right back.